You're listening to Disrobing the Mosh Pit, a dissection of music and popular culture, with your hosts, Pete and Tom.
Heidi, hi.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, how's it all going? All right?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Are you enjoying your Twizzler lookalike Haribo treat? Yeah.
So this evening, Tom and I, every time we do a podcast, we tend to bring along an array of snacks.
Well, you do.
An eclectic mix of snacks.
He surprises and serenades me every time with some sort of exotic
I like to keep you
treat.
guessing.
Yeah, and if you follow the Instagram, you would have seen maybe Twinkies we've gone through. We've gone through, this trial and error process of going from noisy foods to only the soft variety. Twinkies being the epitome of soft food, I think.
I reckon it's one shade away from blended food.
Yeah.
If you blend a steak and chips.
Yeah. Just eating through a straw, basically.
Yeah,
but he's bought, speaking of straws, these basically sherbet licorice strawberry things tonight. So if you hear us noisily smacking lips, that's what we're doing, is eating those.
50% of this podcast is purely eating noises, or like this sort of thing.
The editing job's insane. Getting all the lip smacking and gulping and opening of bottles and cans.
Tom has to put quite a brutal gate on it, everything. Get all the eating sounds out.
So you've chosen a great topic to talk about tonight, Pete.
Yes. So I thought tonight we might talk about the music in games. So what are your thoughts on that there, Tom, when we talk about the music in games? What springs to mind immediately?
Well, I'm a big fan of games, and I think our generation is when I think consoles, maybe a little bit after consoles became so popular in the house, because, we're sort of early 90s probably started, early to mid 90s probably started gaming. I think I got a Nintendo 64 maybe when I was would have been about 95 or 96, probably when I was about third form, so they're about 13. Started off with the old Star Wars and what else was there? Goldeneye, James Bond, Goldeneye 007, on Nintendo 64. But I think for me, it's a great topic, as you say, to think about, because it forced me to really go in there and try to remember these experiences with games and gaming music. We actually have students that have made gaming music a pretty big part of their research projects.
Oh, really?
Where I work, which is quite interesting, because you sort of start to hear about terms like vertical reorchestration and kind of reactive music, and different musical devices that I suppose when you take a different turn or make a decision in the game, go down a certain path, it triggers a different emotional, the music's trying to get a different emotional response. It's like tension or, there's danger up there, but it has to blend really seamlessly in.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting aspect of gaming music that's sort of come out of these projects that I've been seeing. But I guess when you brought that up, the first thing that I thought of was just the classics. And, with a lot of these games, you tie in the oral experience with the gameplay.
Totally.
And it's just such a huge part of it, eh?
To be honest, really is.
Yeah, when I think back, one of the earliest examples for me has to be this Tetris music, isn't it? Yeah. So what's it called again? You kind of looked it
up. I did find it. Didn't write it down.
Krasinski, or what is it?
Something. Oh, it's Koro Beniki. Sorry, my Russian is subpar.
Well, we can sing it though. I can't pronounce it. We can sing it. It goes, There's something about it that must have been easy to program in the sort of 8-bit synth sounds that they had, because the first one that I heard that was on a Game Boy.
Game Boy?
Yeah, Game Boy, and the Tetris, and that came out. No colours, none of this fancy colours business.
Did you ever start your gaming experience on PCs or consoles? I think you mentioned before it was more of a console thing for you.
Well, my dad would have had a PC for his work, and I think because he's kind of like a closet gamer, we've got a 67, I want to say, year-old man who's kind of, I think he's just come around he's just become comfortable with the fact that he loves games.
Yeah.
It's just kind of sad because it's not sad actually, but it's nice that he's starting to embrace it and be, I guess, just like, oh yeah, I guess I am kind of a gamer. Because I think that from his generation, it was maybe seen as a real indulgence. I think he's kind of like, worked really hard in his job his whole life. And I think, I guess your dad was a similar age and you don't often catch them on consoles or playing games. But I think I do remember Dad bringing home a PC and somehow Wolfenstein ended up. The old school Wolfenstein turned up there. And I think we were just kind of, the entire family was pretty hooked on it really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a really early one.
I think I tried to get Dad into games, but I don't think he it never stuck. It's like trying to get him addicted to cigarettes or something, but it never worked.
That's not going to work with a doctor.
No. Quite anti, actually.
Yeah, true. But I think, for me, the earliest one, if we're sort of going to go have a bit of a chronological stab at it, would have to have been Tetris. But what about you?
Tetris is, you're right. For me, I'm the same, Tetris. And Super Mario Brothers. That, that, and I was talking to you earlier on prior to us recording this podcast about a game called Leisure Suit Larry.
Yeah,
and I don't know, it's maybe relatively obscure, but it was the first game, as I was explaining to Tom, that featured quite explicit sort of graphics. Maybe that's what appealed at that age. But you had to answer these sort of adult questions at the beginning to even get into the game. And I remember it vividly. And like the intro music. It was so good. Yeah.
What's interesting, what happened, I guess, as things got more and more advanced technologically, and you started to see music become an important part of the gameplay, right?
So, and this is something that I was thinking about earlier on. Do you think it's less, you sort of talk about earwormy type music, and certainly back in the day of Super Mario Brothers and Sonic the Hedgehog and all those sorts of games where the music is quite, it's usually just the theme music at the very, very beginning. And I probably couldn't really tell you if there's any sort of variance in the music in Super Mario, for example.
Yeah.
But now you tend to find that it's quite more of a cinematic sort of background, a John Williams-esque type background to a lot of games. I
think that sort of I use the term 8-bit, and for those who don't know, that's kind of the way that it's a sample rate, right? This the like really sort of the synthy kind of harsh, fake sounding, you might say, tones that they'd use in older games that you'd like your Sonic and your Alex the Kid, that kind of stuff that people would recognize, that really old synthy sound. And I guess that as the games got more complicated and the environments became bigger, games started to have, composers started to take a more cinematic approach. Good example is this guy, Jeremy Soule, Soule, and he was the composer for a series of games, these Morrowind games, RPGs, where you go in there and you basically, you're a character and you level up and you go and do these side quests and things. And he, looking up his story, which doesn't have a good ending, I discovered as I was looking it up today, but he basically, while he was in high school, he thought he was critical of music in games, and he was like, this could be more rich and dense and more, could absorb the player more. Hang on, could be more absorbing. What's the word I'm looking for there? Anyway, but pretty much he was critical of it. Yeah, immersive. Yeah, could be more immersive. And so I think after he was at high school, he spent a year creating a portfolio of cinematic works for games, and then he marched into, apparently he sent it to Lucasfilm, and he sent it to another game development company called Square. Lucasfilm had like some sort of policy where if they haven't solicited the demo, then they just ignore it totally. But Square listened to it, and they hired him, and he immediately became quite in demand for designing these really cinematic where he was integrating the environment sounds like water and that sort of stuff in quite an important way.
Into the
music. Into the music, yeah.
Wow.
And he started to get real famous, those Morrowind ones. I think he did the music for this game called Baldur's Gate that I played in high school that I was like, man, this is really cool.
Is this like going down the sort of theme of Dungeons and Dragons type?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And fantasy kind of games.
You can tell a lot from a person.
Yeah.
I think about what sort of games they play. Are you a first-person shooter? Or are you a...
I love them all. Actually, there's a good mate of mine who's a regular listener. Andrew, if you're listening, you're the one who introduced me to Baldur's Gate, and I'm pretty sure it's got him on. He was the guy that composed for it. But that started a whole new way of composing for games, and he just got more and more gigs essentially. And then there was some allegations of sexual assault towards the end of his career in 2019, fairly recently. I don't think he was charged, but he was evidently dropped by his labels and that kind of stuff. So not a happy ending with the Jeremy Soule story, but it's interesting when you're looking at the transition from that 8-bit sound into a more sort of cinematic one.
Yeah.
But what I was saying before was, with music playing a role in the gameplay, that is not very common. But then when you had games like Guitar Hero coming out,
Oh, and that's, yeah.
Yeah, do you ever play that?
I've never played it. Wanted to play
really?
it. No, I've never played it. But that's purely a musically based game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess you feel like you're playing in the game. And it's amazing how they made it too, because you can see it in the credits for the game, because they essentially, from what I could gather, recreate the entire song using exactly the same gear.
Wow, really?
Yeah, like they don't, from what I could tell, they don't actually go and grab the stems from the original recording. They straight up re-record it.
Wow.
Like for copyright purposes, I guess they need to do that, or mechanical rights. I don't know.
A bit more flexibility, I guess, as well, right?
Totally, yeah, because they, obviously want to isolate the guitar part, and they, it's amazing watching them do it, because they go to these great lengths to just capture the exact same sound with the drum recording, and it sounds like identical on the games.
Were you a big fan of SingStar?
Yeah, I do fancy
after a few drinks, and then you go and everyone would be getting into SingStar. Someone put it on the PlayStation, everyone would be into it. Yeah.
It is a big thing, eh? Like it's a nice thing, especially when people have got the alcohol to lubricate things, I think. But everyone, that's combining a bunch of stuff together, eh? Gaming, karaoke, probably drinking, just people being together. That's a bit of a money winner, that one.
Yeah. Although I haven't really heard a lot about SingStar in recent years.
Do people get tired of it?
Maybe
they did.
Yeah.
Although, there are these karaoke channels on YouTube, and you can just basically, it's essentially free karaoke.
Oh, where has this been all my life?
It's amazing. We did it like after dinner one night with me and my kids and my wife, and we probably were carrying on for like another 2 hours. You just Google a song in a karaoke version, and it's like straight up, it's the one.
Well,
you can sing. Yeah, it's awesome.
Gone are the days where, like, if you wanted to go to karaoke, you went to a bar to do it, or you had to hire this machine, and it was like real massive, like a big speaker with a big box with like a CRT monitor in it, and it had all the lyrics and stuff on it.
Yeah, we used to go down to this bar in Hataita in Wellington called The Realm. Did you ever go there?
No.
And they had these karaoke Thursdays.
It's very like Dungeons and Dragons theme.
Yeah.
The Realm.
Yeah, I'm digressing a bit, but you know how they are. They've got these clear files with these songs, and you're like, oh, I think I want to try that one. You got to flick through it for like 5 minutes, and then you can't find that song. Oh, time to start again. Inevitably, I'd choose like a Michael Jackson song or a Jamiroquai song or something way out of my range, and just get up there and sound like a total dork.
I'm surprised you didn't choose Tom Jones.
Trying to go, well, yeah. Never again, Pete.
You say that, but let's be honest, you probably did it.
Yeah, that's probably where it all started, actually. Yeah. So what else were you thinking with games more recently where the music's been a key part of it for you?
More recently, you mean like recent games, or you're talking about what I've been sort of mulling over?
Yeah, just either of those things, really.
Well, I was just thinking, when I was looking up whilst you were waxing lyrically just before, when music actually appeared in games for the first time. Well, according to Wikipedia, it was 1991, and it was in the game Myst.
Well, that must be it must be earlier for Oh, really?
Surely.
91?
No, I think what they were talking about in this particular case, and let's be honest, I'm trying to Wikipedia with one hand here, but
Yeah.
I think they're talking about sort of the cinematic blending
Okay.
type.
Because if that's missed like MYST,
That's it.
that game was awesome. I remember playing that.
I always wanted to get into that game. I never got it.
Yeah, that was really cool.
When you were talking about Lucas films before,
Mm.
one game sprung to mind, aside from Star Wars, and that's Loom.
Yeah, Loom. Far up. That's old school.
Do you remember the theme song to that?
No. It sounds like it had a profound effect. Yeah. Loom. That's classic, eh?
I love that game because that was music within the game. It was like Inception.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was like a lot of like you had to figure out the notes on the loom, didn't you? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a little bit like Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Did you ever play that?
no, but I know what
you
you're
had
talking
to
about.
get Ocarina and unlock stuff. Like you play this one, the Song of the Sun, which is like da 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 da. You play it, it turns it from daytime to nighttime.
Oh, yeah.
Fast forward 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a great one. That was a really cool one. Yeah, it was interesting when those games like Wipeout and stuff came out, real fast-paced games. Cool Border as well.
Yeah.
Started bringing in techno and those kinds of driving rhythms.
Well, how about you were talking about Tony Hawk Skater?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like a lot of that was an interesting one in itself because the music wasn't actually built for the game. You know, like there wasn't actually someone composing music for Tony Hawk. It was just a collection of artists of the time.
Yeah, and now you have, I guess, with Grand Theft Auto, they've got these like original soundtracks where you have artists. Like when you jump into a car in Grand Theft Auto and it's different radio stations and it's the same kind of thing. I think maybe Tony Hawk 2 might have started that.
Really?
I don't know, man. Like it took a snapshot of all the artists that I think probably the target demographic we're listening to. So who did we have? Like Lagwagon,
Goldfinger,
yeah, Millencolin,
Listen Jake. Oh, with Papa Roach.
Papa Roach, yeah.
There's Rage Against Machines in there.
Yeah, some real big names. I was thinking about this before. With Tony Hawk 2, it'd be really funny to put it on at a party or something like that and then see how long it took people to click that it was from the playlist was from Tony Hawk 2.
Yeah.
I reckon after two songs, people would put two and two together and just
definitely.
hear that you put on that playlist. Because that was the song to a lot of people's summers. Sorry, the sound of a lot of people's summers.
Oh,
back then,
totally,
wasn't it?
man. And it was like for us. It was definitely in that sort of hit us in the wheelhouse of our age, like all our sort of interests.
As we've discussed before, like a real formative time, eh?
Super. And you know, when we're thinking about things like Super Mario and like the themes that sort of stick with us, do you think that's because it's quite a formative time, or because it's a novelty, or you know, like you sort of because it played such a big part. Like when you think about Super Mario, when I think of Super Mario or Tetris, the game was awesome. But the music also was, they went hand in hand so well together.
You know, I kind of think about the fact, because you and I often talk about, you know, us people being more receptive and open-eared and that kind of stuff when we're that age, young basically, to when we're in our maybe late teens. I kind of feel like you've got so much going on in your head when you're an adult that it's like you've got a limited capacity for fully becoming, I guess, open to the experience, maybe. I don't know. It's kind of like there's something about being, you know, that age and having not much to worry about, which means that I guess you take it all on board. And maybe that's got something to do with the fact that music is just so memorable for us in some of those games.
Added to that sort of level of escapism that games gave you anyway.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because it's like its own world, a world outside of your world.
Yeah.
Or inside of your world.
Yeah. And, you know, what you were talking about with those, you know, with Tony Hawk 2, how it brings in not composed for the game, but it takes songs and it uses already recorded songs, like, you know, from bands. And I think a lot of games do that to great effect these days as well. Like there's like a Gorillaz song that was like in Borderlands. And in Fallout 3, there was that like, I don't want to set the world on fire.
Kind of spooky, yeah. Was it
Real spooky. Yeah, totally. Because it was this like post-apocalyptic zooming out of this radio and this sort of like post-nuclear war kind of. So crazy juxtaposition there. Old school like happy-go-lucky song and then this. Yeah, that was a really good example of using an established track, I guess, that everyone kind of knows already and can associate with to great effect because it's got this like crazy background.
Yeah, true.
I was speaking of music with some games. I think like, the sound and the way sound integrates is quite interesting as well. I was watching recently a clip about this guy recording the audio for Mortal Kombat, the latest Mortal Kombat stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, you and I talked about that.
The audio for the movie Mortal Kombat or the game Mortal Kombat?
No, for the game, for like actually the sound effects for just like fatalities and stuff like that.
Were you talking about hitting meat?
Yeah, he does. He actually works with fruit quite a lot.
Fruit?
Yeah. And he's going like this guy. He's really nice guy, and he's sort of quite mild mannered. And he's sort of hearing stuff, people punch stuff, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that'd be great for ripping someone's throat out." It's like it's real dark stuff. And he gets this guy. This guy goes in and sees how he kind of does it. And there's this disgusting point where he eats this. It's kind of like ADSR. What's the
AMSR?
AMSR. Yeah. Because he eats this banana. Like he goes like, some days I just come into the studio and I just try to be as disgusting as I can, and he eats this banana real close to the microphone, and just makes all these like disgusting like noises, and then he affects it and like chops it all together and does all this cool stuff, and that's the sound of someone ripping something out of someone else's body or punching their head off or blowing a hole through their chest cavity or that kind of stuff. It's really interesting, eh? It's worth a look if you kind of get the chance.
Where is it on YouTube?
It's on YouTube, yeah.
Definitely. Look at that.
But that's got those tags, like stings is another word for it, I guess, in the game. Da-da-da, finish him.
Oh, yeah.
Like these little things like that in games. Another one in Street Fighter, they're like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, like here comes a new challenger. Did you ever get that? Like I was in an arcade. Or on the Mega Drive and someone else like push start on the second control pad. New challenger. What did the guy say? Yeah. In Street Fighter 2. So, I mean, there's the long music that happens, I guess, while you're playing, and then there's the sounds that are so synonymous. Like before we were talking about those rings that whoop, that was a terrible thing. That was a terrible rendition of it, but Sonic when he with the rings. Yeah, also a really, really big part of it that heaps of thought goes into, obviously.
It's amazing to think that I hadn't even really given it much thought until we started actually talking about this earlier on, about how music in all the games that we've played, it contributes so much to your immersion in the game itself. Like imagine if you played those games without the music at all.
Yeah.
It'd be so weird. And you probably, you'd probably still get immersed in them, but certainly not to the same degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or be so invested emotionally in them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great series that came out recently called, I think it's called High Score. It was on Netflix.
Oh, I've seen that on there.
Yeah, it's really good, man.
Is
like
it?
actually not, because they talk about the evolution of games, and they also talk about, I guess, what went behind kind of what was the idea behind them, and they talk about things like Doom.
Oh, I have seen that series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good, eh?
Real good.
But the actual music to the series itself is all that kind of 8-bit stuff that I was talking about, but done in a really cool way. So it's definitely worth a watch. But it was interesting hearing the guy talk about Doom, because they were sort of saying they started putting in heavy, like almost metal, like industrial. It was kind of like a Rammstein kind of thing, but industrial kind of sounding heavy stuff, because I think they were kind of goth-ish themselves, those developers, right? And they were just
that guy's really interesting. That
because that's right, because they did the first kind of like online gaming, like a and hearing them talk about it, they wanted to set it up so it's almost like a nightclub vibe, fully immersive, this like pumping heavy music, flashing lights on the screen, and just like danger everywhere you kind of look. So yeah,
Was that sort of the same sort of era as Nine Inch Nails, sort of industrial?
definitely would have been. I think.
Techno?
Yeah, yeah. That would have been what 90. I don't know, 7 or something. Hey.
Doom?
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Well,
Something
certainly
like
in
that.
the 90s.
Yeah. It's interesting what we say with Loom, was one of the first games that had the music
Mm.
in there. Yeah, because
I
I
love
I had some great times playing that game.
I can't remember what the characters' names were, but I just remember like he like wore the cloak and just had the eyes. It's kind of like one of those characters from Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Jawas.
Yeah, Jawas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those Star Wars games. I mean, the magic that happened with the music, with regards to that John Williams score, easily translated to the games. In every single game that's Star Wars now, of course, it's owned by Disney. They incorporate that same, those same motifs. You know, there's the Emperor's March and Darth Vader's kind of thing, and we've talked about it before. But it's in all the games, and it immediately puts all these connections in your head. You know, it's just so the brain recognition with Star Wars is just absolutely astounding.
It's nuts. It's been around for so long too. Since 1977.
Oh man, such an enterprise, eh?
Do you think, like, you know, when you were talking about 8-bit sound earlier on, you'll notice that with all of those sort of older games, they're generally quite busy soundtracks?
Yeah.
Because I suppose you'd have to, wouldn't you? Because you don't have the sort of luxury of being able to put ambient sound in.
Totally.
So you'd have to make them relatively busy to make them stand out.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like Sonic.
I mean, aside from the fact that they're generally quite action-packed games anyway, aside from Tetris, but even that's quite action-packed because it's tension-filled, I suppose.
Yeah, man. I don't know what you've been playing, but I get real anxious playing Tetris.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus God.
Oh, no, I didn't rotate that far.
Have you played Red Dead Redemption?
No, but I really want to.
That game is so amazing.
It looks intense.
It's so cool, man. Like, I mean, I played the first one years ago, and I was totally blown away because it's kind of like open world. You know, you can go hunting bears, or you can do these, you know, the mini quests and stuff, and the physics are so good. And there are times where there's a lot of tension and times where there's just pretty much you're in like a very calm, relaxed state riding around and kind of doing what you want. Zelda was the same, Zelda Ocarina of Time, because you'd be doing these mini games. Or you could be on the main mission and, you know, saving someone or doing something really intense, or you could be fishing in like a pond and stuff like that. And the music, so I guess those aren't fast paced, and the music really kind of, well, reflects that, I suppose. But back to Red Dead Redemption, that's amazing. You know, it's a huge orchestral score. It's when you think about it, looking at the credits. I remember looking at the credits after the game finished and going like, my God, that is a huge undertaking, scoring those kinds of games. I guess you have to think about all of these possibilities that the narrative might take in different ways. It's so complicated.
And how does that tie, like, how do they tie that music? Obviously, they've got like a sort of a narrative, all these like branching narratives. If they mind map it or whatever it is on a whiteboard, they must have like music that they've obviously set up for any sort of narrative that you can come up with, and then it's coded into the game so that whichever turn you take at a particular point, it's going to sort of set that off, kind of like Pac-Man.
I know that, like what we were talking about before with vertical orchestration and.
What is vertical orchestration?
Well, from what I can remember, it's pretty much using lots of different musical elements that can operate independently as well as all together.
Right.
And it's one of the terms, I'm pretty sure that's the right definition. But another aspect of it is, of course, like seamlessly going from scene to scene. So if you've got, and next time you're gaming, like try to pay attention, I guess, if you are going from walking around doing like bugger all to a really intense scenario, have a think about how the music changes, because that's quite interesting. Yeah, that's a big that's a big part of it. Red Dead Redemption is a really good example of that, by the way.
Well, when you're talking about Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Battlefield.
Oh, yeah.
Because Battlefield has the same sort of idea in terms of It's not as open world, and there probably aren't as many open narratives to it, or like pathways you can potentially take in any form of stage. But it's certainly is quite the sort of cinematic scoring that goes along with it, and the quite like sort of heady stories that you
First
play
person
through.
shooter, eh? Battlefield?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my jam. I like first person shooter
Yeah.
as opposed to outside the body.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Resident Evil, that sort of third person almost like yeah. Resident Evil, they started, I guess, getting into the real freaky music, eh? A lot of space. Because I think games like that really work with the silence of it too, eh?
Yeah.
They kind of work with the relationship between the darkness on the screen or the same thing, but lack of light, where you can't see to sort of mess with your
that's so creepy
anxiety, and silence, and then, all the horror movie kind of sound tactics. I mean, they don't, not that blatant, but just getting these crazy sounds, screams in the background, all that kind of stuff. Sort of getting more into sound rather than music, but it all sort of ties in together.
Did you ever look into some of the more famous composers? Obviously, you talked about Jeremy Soule.
There's the guy that did all the Final Fantasy stuff, eh?
Is it Nobuo Uematsu? Sorry,
Uematsu? Possibly. I will look that up. But I know that it's big business, man.
It's a huge business.
Yeah, because they do big orchestral tours, as well.
Is it sort of Hans Zimmer-esque, where he sort of like, he tours
he's like a rock star, yeah.
He's like a rock star, yeah. Even though he's scoring mainly for movies.
Yeah, Nobuo Uematsu.
Sorry, my Japanese pronunciation is terrible.
No, that was great.
Great.
That was good.
Yep.
That was pretty significant for a lot of people, I think, that Final Fantasy stuff too, eh?
Well, would you say Final Fantasy was one of those games that it's kind of is it third person? It's third person-y type thing?
I never really got into it, and people would be like, what are you doing? Why haven't you played it? But I think it is third person. There are elements of it that are a little bit like the sort of Zelda.
Huge fantasy worlds, eh?
Yeah, in a big way. But such a complex score as well. So you can see why I guess you'd sort of look for an opportunity to make a little bit more from it. If people are interested in buying the soundtrack to a game, of course they're going to be interested in coming and seeing it live.
True.
Performed by an orchestra.
Have you ever heard of that? Like, are there actually albums for sale, like game music soundtracks?
Yeah.
Are there?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
Wow.
I'm pretty sure.
I'd love to see that. I would.
The Final Fantasy thing, they have done big tours.
I can
with
totally
gigantic
see
orchestras,
that.
yeah.
Because that's, you see, like, when you see people doing cosplay, 9 times out of 10, there's got to be some Final Fantasy in there, eh?
Totally the same diff, yeah. Yeah, absolutely the same diff. Yeah, man. Yeah, so I think that definitely for me, those big orchestral score ones are like, I think that's definitely part of the appeal because I'm kind of one of those people who I can't like touch games or else I just get fully into them and for a while there at the end of every year. As we got into the summer holidays, I'd buy an Xbox game, and then like clock it, like close the curtains, sit down, play it till it's finished for like might take me like 2 weeks or something.
Did you get scurvy from not being out in the sunlight?
You'd think so.
Yeah.
Looking like a Nosferatu at the end of it.
I had a flatmate that got scurvy.
Really?
From not.
How does that work?
Well, he was like this mad coder, like because when I went to university, this is before I met him, but he's like this mad computer guy.
Yeah.
He's like super talented at it as well. But he got into this game Diablo 2.
Oh yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Anyway, he came up with a way that you can make. I've never played Diablo 2, but in the game apparently like you can buy like swords and shields, etc., etc. And he came up with a way that he could sell them on eBay. And he did it. And they'd be quite cheap, or you could buy packs and stuff like that. I don't know how it all works. Anyway, for this guy that was 18, 19 years old, he made like some redonkulous amount of money.
Wow.
like hundreds of thousands of US dollars.
Wow.
Yeah. And but in doing so, he got scurvy because he basically just locked himself in his room in the dark in front of his computer screen for like, I don't know, weeks, months. And he was like nuts. I hadn't heard of scurvy since like
Pirates?
sailors in ye old days.
Yeah, man.
It's like, oh yeah, no, Chris got it.
True.
Chris is like,
What's he doing now?
he's a massive game developer.
Man.
He's just sold, I don't know if he sold his company quite recently to someone quite big, but like he wrote this game. I can't remember what the game is, but it's massive. It's got a massive following. He's like a multi-millionaire.
That's cool, man.
It was always going to happen. He was super
Yeah.
talented, and you could see that was in his future.
Mark Zuckerberg, ilk, kind of Zuckerberg.
Very
ilk,
much
yeah.
so, of New Zealand.
Yeah, true.
Apparently, he's super. Well, Chris was always down to earth, and he still is. Same guy.
Yeah, okay.
Still super same guy. Yeah, which is awesome to hear.
That's cool. Scurvy, man. That's dedication.
I know, scurvy.
Yeah, all right.
Anyway, we digress.
So it's interesting, when you want to, because I think a lot of contemporaries of mine as well have investigated working in the industry, playing game music.
How would you get into that?
I think you kind of have to start pretty low in the game. You have these companies like Activision, Bethesda, Rockstar Games, and they're game development companies basically like that. And I think you pretty much go in there, and it's so, what's the word? Not competitive, but it's so. There are so many people who want it.
As a music composer for
Yes,
games?
yeah. And they have these in-house teams. I know a lot of them have these in-house teams, and you go in there, but it's quite not awesome money and really hard work.
Mm.
So I think you have to really want to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, real long hours, part of a big team. And I think, like I was saying, the pay's not great, but that's from what I can gather, the best way into it.
Right.
And I think they do apps as well.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of these games have apps. I've made music for a couple of apps.
Oh, have you?
Which is quite interesting because, of course, you just basically have files and files of these different, the da-da-da, finish him, that kind of stuff. And that was quite fun.
You'd have to come up with so many different, if you were creating music for every single scenario in a game, you'd have to think of every single scenario in the game so you could actually have the music for it. Otherwise, it'd be like some weird gaps.
We need to get a game composer on here as a guest, eh?
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
That'd be real cool. I don't know if you have to try and find someone in New Zealand. Geez, that'd be quite difficult.
Just do it via Zoom. Would you be?
Yeah, true. Oh my God, yeah, that's a really good idea.
Well, we live in the year 2021, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have been tried and tested.
I'm just going to write this out on my typewriter and send it via pigeon. Hopefully, within a matter of months, they'll come back to me.
Yeah, we should all be getting pretty bloody good at the online stuff by now, shouldn't we? With all these lockdowns.
Yeah.
And whatnot. Yeah, so I've looked into it as well.
Have you?
Yeah, and they are often advertising, and I guess like the few places that I kind of looked at, all offshore, not in New Zealand, and I think it's like starting salary is like $30,000 US or something.
Okay.
So definitely pretty like not very attractive unless I guess they get a lot of graduates out of university kind of
if
getting
you're starting from the bottom, eh?
Yeah, totally. But it would be a real fun atmosphere to be, in.
I've often thought that sort of like arena would be quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see it. Like, have you seen that movie Grandma's Boy?
No.
You got to see it, man. It's real funny. It's real funny. But it's about a game development company as well. And everything's open source, and they're all pretty. In their lunch breaks, they have these like basically like gaming competitions.
Yeah,
and looks real fun. So it'd be a really nice environment to be in for a little while.
Yeah,
I think it would be something that I'm still trying to encourage some of our graduates to kind of go for. But yeah, have investigated working in that kind of atmosphere.
It would be really cool.
Yeah,
I remember seeing an article about the Google campus in California.
Oh, yeah.
Is it California, and it just looks crazy awesome.
Yeah. Just I've heard things about it like everything's free. You just walk around and
yeah, totally. All the food's free.
Everyone gets
free.
a Segway.
Yeah.
It does sound real interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a bit of tasting notes.
Yeah.
Now maybe we should do a version that's an 8-bit version.
We can definitely do an 8-bit version.
Yeah.
In fact, if you listen to this, you'll listen to an 8-bit version
You
of
are.
Tasting Notes.
Yeah. Hopefully we've succeeded.
Yeah.
I think so. So what have you got for us tonight, Pete?
Well, tonight we've got a lovely wine again. We've gone down the wine avenue. It's CJ Pask Gimlet Gravels Cabernet Merlot 2016. Very good year.
It was a very good year.
5 years ago. I just thought we might go with local again. I have got no idea about wine. Again, I'm not a sommelier. But I thought we might give this a bit of a go and see how it goes.
Well, we didn't refrigerate it this time.
No, and I've been letting this breathe the entire time we've been talking. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. But hey, we'll see how it pans out.
I reckon you can notice when you let them breathe, even with bottles that are kind of like,
Is that more of a corking thing, though?
Well, I thought it was kind of like a temperature. There's like a bit of a sharpness that you get like straight out of, with the cap straight off. Isn't it like exposure to the room air and temperature?
I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure.
Technically, I guess you should be decanting it, eh?
Well, then maybe that's for next time. We'll have to decant the wine
Yeah.
before we start the episode.
Yeah, I used to have to do that all the time as a waiter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
Where
I
did you
guess
used to wait?
Well, a bunch of places, not the least of which was the Trattoria La Toscana.
Did
in
you
town.
actually?
Yeah, man.
My wife did too.
Yeah, did she?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Was it when
brutal.
The old flame?
It was good. It was where Mamacita is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in that spot. Yeah, but that was good. But also, I was like kind of like a wine waiter, not like hardcore sommelier, but like a wine waiter at the Whaikaho Luxury Lodge in Featherston there.
Really?
And at the start of every night, the food and beverage manager, or the what do you call them again, maitre d', would sit us down and would each try samples of the courses and then pair wines to it. He'd sort of take us through a taste testing thing like that.
Every night?
Yeah, every night. Yeah,
Wow.
for each different menu. Yeah, it was a cool place to work for one summer for about 2.5 months.
I can imagine. I got this mental image in my head now of you. You know, when you give people a tasting of the wine,
Yeah.
sort of like stepping in, pouring a little bit of wine, and stepping back with your arm behind your back with a white apron on. What did you think, kind sir? Let me pour you. This wine is corked. Like,
Had them with some
do
generic,
apologise.
like, yeah, I'm getting chrysanthemums on the nose.
this is a hibiscus.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Actually, it's funny because my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she had a job at the same place as a housekeeper. And one night we had this situation where, housekeeper room service kind of thing. So one night we had this situation where it was like a Swiss couple, and they tipped me like, I don't know, $120 or something. And then they left in it early, and their room was like, because everyone stayed in their chalets, and so their chalet was the last on her list of ones to do in a little golf cart. And when they got to their room, she was still in there, and they basically screamed at her and kicked her out of their room. And we both arrived home at the same time that night, and I was like, oh, I've got such a good tip tonight. And she was like, ooh, she had the worst night. Yeah, it was funny. Good times. Good times in Featherston.
Oh.
So what do you make of the wine?
Well, let's have a taste.
Give it the gargle.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Oaky. Well, it's very difficult to tell because I've just like sullied my palate with like Twizzlers
Yeah.
for the last 30 minutes.
I reckon it's nice, man. I'm getting like a deep plum. And I'd probably say,
Hibiscus. I'm getting hibiscus on the nose.
yeah, I'd probably say plum every time. I'm going to check out the legs now.
I'm going with alluvial soils.
Oh, very nice. Good legs. Good legs.
No, it's
Legs is relative to alcohol content, right?
What is it?
Well, I think it is. So, in theory, like a Syrah should be a bit more kick-ass. So the legs would be a bit more robust or that kind of thing.
It is. This is definitely quite robust.
Yeah.
I would give it a bit of stone fruit. It's quite deep, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what fruit I'm putting on it. Again, I've sullied my palate, so Everything kind of tastes like mouthwash.
I went with kind of
vaguely.
Black Doris.
Oh, yeah. It's
Bit of the Black
it's an
Doris
elephant
plums.
plum type arrangement.
What would you pair it with, Pete?
Cheese and crackers, but nice gorgonzola.
Oh, gorgonzola.
Yeah.
I reckon I'd pair it with a pork and fennel sausage. Yeah, man. Better be some kind of meal right there.
A medium rare ribeye
Oh, yeah.
or a lentil patty.
Lentil patty.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no.
Well, delicious.
Yeah.
Cheers,
It's
everyone.
a nice drop. Yeah. Okay, so back to the matter at hand. The music of games. How do we want to conclude this?
So it's come a long way.
Yeah.
It really has come a long way. When I think about, sorry, I've just taken a big bite of Twizzler. It's like my post wine snack.
So apart from Twizzlers, what would it pair with?
So when you think about the evolution of music,
Yeah.
and they've sort of come from punchy sort of 8-bit sound to
Yeah.
we're talking about Battlefield and Red Dead Redemption.
Dirra. Yeah.
Yeah, I just mumble that. It's more sort of a cinematic type feel. You don't really get a lot of punchy soundtracks now, do we? Not that I can think of, anyway.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. The interesting thing about gaming music is that it's got to cover, I guess, a lot of these modern games, like your Grand Theft Autos and that kind of stuff. They have to cover this whole plethora of situations and emotions and that kind of stuff and that kind of thing. Whereas a film might not. You know, you might have a film which is like an action movie, it doesn't have any comedy in it. But often with these games, like Red Dead Redemption, it does actually. I had to think before that one.
off now.
Yeah. It does cover everything. So it's like just a gargantuan project, really. Just get everything in there. I, for one, am looking forward to seeing where it goes from here, really.
Yeah, me too, actually. I'm interested to see what the next sort of evolution of how they sort of integrate music into games.
Yeah.
And what's memorable and what's not. Because I'll be honest, like after playing a few of these games recently, they definitely add a lot of depth to the game themselves. However, I couldn't tell you offhand what the sound was. It's kind of like when we
That's
talked
a good
about
point.
adverts.
Yeah.
You know, and when we talked about how sort of like the warehouse had like a very catchy hook.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, sort of now sort of going towards that sort of sonic branding type element where it's in there, but you don't really, really know.
Absolutely, yeah. So maybe we've lost that trademark sound for certain games.
Yeah, maybe.
That's actually a really good point, man. Yeah, because I can't think of one off a modern one that, you know,
No.
not in the last sort of 5 or 10 years.
No.
I mean, there are people who are serious gamers who probably could, but you know, back in the day, there were those signature sounds. Yeah. Interesting thought.
Absolutely.
And a great way to conclude it.
Awesome. Hey, well, thanks very much, Tom.
Thanks, Pete.
Cheers, man.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you next time.
Catch you guys.
See ya.
Bye.